By the time Jonathan got to the IFM movie house, it was already too late. Morty Gunderson and some other man he didn't recognize had thrown open the doors, saying something about protecting the town from all the murders. Which, of course, he had done an absolutely abysmal job of. Aside from the blood on Morty's own hands, apparently 2 people had died in that theater while he was fetching his apparent brother-in-law. Jonathan was not happy. First off, he had skipped class in hopes to rescue his childhood friend, who had cryptically told him on the phone of the urgency of the ordeal. It was only made worse when apparently 2 people had died. Oh no. It wasn't Cassidy, was it? Was Cassidy okay? Rushing past Morty and Air, Jonathan ran into the theater, searching for his friend. Thankfully, he spotted her quickly, still waiting in the lobby. She looked thoroughly sickened by the events, but she brightened a bit when she saw her friend. "Cassidy! Oh, thank woo!" Jonathan exclaimed, running over to her. "Are you all right?" "Jonathan!" As her friend approached, Cassidy wrapped her arms around him in a big hug. "I'm fine, but 2 people were murdered. I shouldn't have come." Jonathan frowned, gently hugging back. Hey, it's okay. You're safe now." The mob was furious with Morty, and Jonathan couldn't help but feel the same. The man had murdered people in cold blood, and now was locking people inside buildings, all in the name of so-called justice. This had gone too far. Morty and Air fled, several townspeople chasing after them. Some stayed behind and discussed ways to convince the mob not to kill Morty, even though he more than deserved it at this point. "Whatever we do, he needs to be stopped," Jonathan spoke up. "That man shed more blood than the Mafia themselves at this rate." "We can't kill him! Killing him would make us just as bad," Cassidy insisted. "Besides, I'm so sick of death. I don't want anyone else to die." "If we can capture him alive, we should," Jonathan assured her. "But at the same time, it might be for the best if he died, because then he couldn't kill anyone else, right?" "No, we can't!" A familiar chuckle echoed through the back of the room, causing both Cassidy and Jonathan to tense. Cassidy already knew he was there, but Jonathan was surprised when he looked back to see the ghost of Professor Bardsley standing in the corner of the room. He'd already heard rumors of the existence of ghosts, but what bothered him more was that Bardsley looked amused, of all things. Why are you laughing?" Jonathan questioned. "Oh, don't mind me. This is very entertaining to watch," Professor Bardsley replied simply, in a smooth tone that surprised Jonathan. "To kill or not to kill, a difficult decision to be sure, but does it really matter? We've already seen that it's not just Gunderson out for blood, and it's very hard to stop an angry mob." He indicated Miko's body as it was being carried off to the morgue. "Also, as for your theory, I wouldn't be so quick to assume that death would stop him. That man is nothing if not determined, after all." Just shut up, will you?" Cassidy growled. "Just shut up!" Professor Bardsley just smiled, floating past them and toward the exit. "I think I'd like to see how Gunderson is faring anyway. It should make for quite a show." Jonathan just stood agape, watching silently as the professor left the building. What was that? He'd watched the man die. He knew that he was in the Mafia, but he'd never seen Bardsley act so completely cold before. "We need to do something," Cassidy muttered, snapping Jonathan out of his thoughts. "We can't just stand here while people die. We need to do something." "What do you suggest we do?" Jonathan asked. Cassidy pulled away from her friend, turning to Cheryl. "You wanted to try and stop the mob, right? Maybe I can help." On his way out of the theater, Professor Bardsley noticed a ghost woman pass by him, heading inside. He didn't recognize her as an Ifem Cove resident, which he found a little odd. Ghosts from out of town coming in? Perhaps ghosts were attracted to the presence of other ghosts? Granted, he didn't have encyclopedic knowledge of everyone in town, so perhaps it was just someone he didn't know very well. He shrugged it off for now, looking out into the town and wondering where the angry mob had gotten off to. And then he heard a name that caught his attention. WaffleNet. He raised an eyebrow, glancing back toward the theater. He'd just been reading a rather expansive book on WaffleNet last night, and found it curious that someone else was mentioning it. As Cassidy and Jonathan followed the others outside, Professor Bardsley drifted back inside, searching for the source of the voice. Had this person made the same connection between WaffleNet and Ifem Cove as he had? When he got there, he saw the ghost woman from before, speaking with that child detective he'd seen wandering around town, and the ghost of the delusional gamer. From what he could gather of the conversation, the woman had also read the book, as she was describing its contents very eloquently. From the look of it, she was also a scholar, and had apparently done an extensive study on WaffleNet. "It was beautiful," she said with a laugh. "History in the making, and I cannot tell you how proud I am for being part of it." Wait a minute. A part of it? Was this woman from WaffleNet? Looking over her again, he realized he did recognize her. It was Dr. Pallada, the author of the book on WaffleNet. But of course, as even the layperson knows, history repeats itself. If that is what is happening here— Dr. Pallada gazed at the gruesome scene around her, seeming pleased. Then I have no time to waste. I must keep researching. It really is a fascinating study what has happened here, Professor Bardsley agreed. I was surprised just how quickly society collapsed when they realized what had befallen this peaceful town. Within just a few days there have been over a dozen deaths, several of them at the hands of the frenzied townspeople. He gave another one of his serene smiles. If you'd like, I'd be happy to help you with your research. Dr. Pallada, yes? It really was quite a unique experience listening to Dr. Pallada. Professor Bardsley had long since accepted the fact that he was different from most people. He hadn't thought he would ever meet a person with a similar outlook as him. Honestly, he didn't think it possible. But the way Dr. Pallada spoke about the nature of humanity, it was clear that they understood each other perfectly. It was so unusual to him, and so fascinating. Yes, I definitely had a hand in all of this. It was very satisfying, I must say, he affirmed when she brought it up. With a charming smile, he offered a hand to shake. Professor Leland Bardsley. I taught anthropology at the local college. And yes, I would be happy to show you around the town. It really is quite a lovely place. I am a defender of good and protector of the innocent, shouted the delusional gamer boy, pointing his toy lightsaber at Dr. Pallada. I will not let you spread your disease to the people of Ifam Cove. I will win. Professor Bardsley couldn't help but stifle a laugh, watching as the boy made a failed attempt at attacking Dr. Pallada. The boy's second attempt at battle looked somewhat more menacing, however, so the professor thought to step in and restrain the boy before his antics got out of hand. Come now, it isn't very polite attacking everyone you meet, Professor Bardsley told him, his voice smooth and sinister. Haven't you learned that yet? The boy struggled out of Professor Bardsley's grasp, accusing him of killing the Stylomancer. Presumably that meant Mr. Endicott. Which, of course, was entirely untrue. Mr. Endicott had been killed by Abominable Ifam, which he had nothing to do with. But before he could correct him on this, Dr. Pallada spoke again. Oh, an anthropologist? Well, it is no historian, as history is the queen of the social sciences, but nevertheless a noble profession, she admitted. Besides, if you had a hand in this, you must know a lot about this phenomenon. She paused, noticing that the boy's toy lightsaber had started glowing, as if it were real. Professor Bardsley was admittedly unsettled by this. Had the boy gained the ability to turn his delusions into reality? Did ghosts have that kind of power? The professor had never cared much for Star Wars, but he was familiar enough with the franchise to know that a lightsaber was a dangerous weapon. So when Dr. Pallada had retreated out of the way of the attack, Professor Bardsley did likewise, sidestepping out of the way. Dr. Pallada re-emerged beside him moments later, taking him by the arm. Let's go. He is not worth my time, she said, and he couldn't help but agree. I am very interested in your work, Professor Bardsley, and I am very much interested in seeing what more can be gleaned from this town that I can further add to my WaffleNet research. Additionally, I would be very glad to share with you what I have learned from my own personal experience in WaffleNet. Due to my book being published posthumously, I believe there were things in it which must have been left out, which would make for a fascinating addition to my theory. I'd be happy to accompany you, Doctor, Professor Bardsley replied, following after her and moving away from the boy and his lightsaber. I think the town is about to shed blood again, and I, for one, would like to watch. Professor Leland G. Bardsley did not like being a ghost. That said, it did make traveling a whole lot easier, especially once he received pointers about efficient movement from one Diana Pallada, who had a healthy dose of experience. And traveling was good, because though Ifam Cove was terribly amusing, not everything Bardsley desired was in Ifam Cove. Certain things laid elsewhere. He'd started this particular vein of research before his death, actually, after he'd received that padded envelope through the slot, with that sweet, precious potion inside. You couldn't give something like a revival potion to someone like Bardsley and expect for him not to undertake further exploration on its origins, its composition, its replicability. He hadn't gotten very far before having his throat slit in the burger hut, had been too busy with killing and plotting with his dear friends in Chill of the Night, but since then he'd made significant progress, in between crooning venomous things into the ears of the surviving townspeople, of course. And today, as the Morty hunt continued under the pale white moon, Leland G. Bardsley had a visit to make elsewhere. A very exciting visit. I tracked you down through the corridor, he whispered to the old, shaking man, who sat in a wobbling armchair in the living room of his house a few hours outside Ifam Cove. He's senile now, a bit difficult to glean information from, you see. Bardsley smiled crookedly. At first it was all denial. claimed that he knew not what I was speaking of, and then, once he at least conceded that, he swore up and down that he couldn't remember from where he'd gotten the potion. Told me he'd brewed it himself, but that was a lie. I am very good at picking out liars, old man. Bardsley ran his ghostly fingers along the old man's wrinkled forehead as the old man cowered and recoiled. Finally, he gave me your name, and what a treat that was for me. I read up all about you, and that led me to such an interesting discovery, Mr. Jackson. Seems we have a common friend. Please, murmured Archibald Jackson. That potion was so long ago. I wouldn't be able to make it again, and it's too potent anyway. That's why I sold it. It wasn't natural. Oh, I'm not relying on you, leered Bardsley. From you I merely wish to have your original notes and instructions. I plan to alter it anyhow, you see, and I've already found a very capable chemist of my own to make it for me. He patted Archie Jackson on the arm. You might know her, in fact. She's a college student, a chemistry major. Sweet girl, that Cassidy. Archie's face fell. No, not my granddaughter. She's safe, for now, Bardsley crooned. But if you aren't amenable with supplying me with your notes, Mr. Jackson. I'll get them, he said, blinking back tears. Please, just don't hurt my granddaughter. Don't worry, Mr. Jackson, sang Leland G. Bardsley. You can trust me. You can always trust me. Cassidy was tired of chasing Morty. She was tired of hunting, tired of death, just tired. So as the mob continued through the town, Jonathan took poor Cassidy back to the dorms, where they could get some peace and quiet. At first they just relaxed, eating frozen yogurt and reminiscing over the old days. Thinking back to their carefree childhood was nice, but bittersweet. After all that had happened here in Ifam Cove, would they ever really be that carefree again? Things looked bleak for the little seaside town, but Cassidy didn't want to give up. No matter how useless she felt, how overwhelmed, she still wanted to do something. Ultimately, she decided to confide in her friend, showing him her notes. Investigation notes, but also something else. My grandpa was a miracle worker when he was younger, she explained. He made remarkable scientific discoveries. He could have changed medicine as we know it if he wanted to. He even made a potion that could bring someone back to life. Are you serious? Jonathan gasped. Cassidy nodded. I actually called him the other day to ask about it. I thought, if we had a potion like that, maybe we could make a difference here. Maybe we could do something about all of the deaths. She sighed, her eyes glazed over with a dull longing. He said he didn't remember all the details, but he told me a little about it, and I took some notes. Do you actually think you could recreate it? Jonathan asked hopefully. I don't know. I'd like to, Cassidy admitted, but I don't know the whole recipe, and I don't have all the ingredients I'd need anyway. Oh, that can be arranged, Miss Jackson. Both Cassidy and Jonathan watched in horror as the ghost of Professor Bardsley floated through the door, carrying with him a small stack of papers. Cassidy gasped, leaping to her feet. What are you doing here? She shrieked. Oh, good, it worked, Professor Bardsley remarked, rifling through the papers in his hand with a pleased smile. It turns out ghosts can bring solid objects with them through walls. I'm sure Miss Boudreau would be pleased to know that. What do you want, Bardsley? Jonathan spat. I've been doing some research of my own, Professor Bardsley told them simply. I'm sure you remember Miss Dywhite, yes? Cassidy swallowed hard, but said nothing. Before her unfortunate demise, she gave me something, he continued, a very valuable item, which she oh so innocently trusted to me, a small vial containing a very potent potion. She claimed it to have the power to give life back to the dead. I'm sure you've heard of it. Oh, woo, no, Cassidy breathed. Suddenly it all made sense. That broken vial in your coat? Precisely, Professor Bardsley smiled politely, handing Cassidy the stack of papers. I was able to track down the man who'd created the potion, your grandfather, and brought with me his notes on how to make it. With these, it should be easy for you to recreate it. I would be more than happy to provide you with the necessary ingredients as well. Cassidy frowned, glancing through the notes. This was definitely her grandfather's handwriting, but... You destroyed the potion. Why would you want me to make another one? Isn't it obvious? The professor spread his arms apart, emphasizing his ghostly form. The one flaw with your grandfather's potion was that it only worked on the recently killed. I imagine it wouldn't be too difficult for a chemistry major to correct that, though, You want to revive yourself, Jonathan realized. Naturally, was Professor Bardsley's reply. As well as Lindsay, of course. Perhaps Richmond Boudreau as well, who knows? No, Cassidy hissed, pages crumpling slightly in her clenched fists. I would never do that for you. Are you sure about that, Miss Jackson? Professor Bardsley cooed, delicately picking up a scarf that Cassidy had left on the doorknob. Perhaps what you need is a little added incentive. Jonathan tensed as the professor strode confidently toward him, pulling the scarf taut. What are you— No! Cassidy shouted, but it was too late. In one swift motion, Professor Bardsley had wrapped the scarf around Jonathan's neck, pulling hard. Jonathan gasped for breath, struggling against the professor's grasp. If you do as I say, you can save his life, Professor Bardsley sneered, a downright murderous grin crossing his face. What will you do, Miss Jackson? Okay, I'll do it, Cassidy cried, choking back tears. Just don't kill him, please! I'm sorry, Professor Bardsley replied in a sickeningly sly voice, but I want to make certain you do it right. No! But it was too late. Jonathan breathed his last breath, collapsing lifelessly to the floor, and all Cassidy could do was watch, tears welling up in her eyes. This couldn't be happening. Her teacher had just killed her best friend. There, Professor Bardsley said, dropping the scarf carelessly to the floor. Now you'll have to get the potion right if you want to bring him back. Cassidy did her best to stammer out a reply to this, but no words came out. It had been hard to believe before, but there was no denying it anymore. Her teacher was a cold-blooded murderer. You may test the potion on your friend here, Professor Bardsley spoke in a cold, professional tone. Like he didn't even care. He didn't even care! Once you have a working prototype, you will deliver the finished potion to me. Again, let me know which ingredients you will need. I'll be more than happy to provide them. He smiled at her. I expect you will do an excellent job, Miss Jackson. And with that, Professor Bardsley exited the room, leaving Cassidy alone to cry over her friend's body.